During World War II, Nazi Germany created some of the most terrifying and bizarre machines the world had ever seen. As the war ended, many of these experimental and oversized vehicles were abandoned, left to rust in forests, buried in bunkers, or forgotten in remote corners of Europe. Some were monstrous tanks never completed. Others were odd prototypes that defied logic. For decades, they lay hidden, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, through incredible finds and painstaking restoration efforts, these chilling relics have come back into view. From amphibious motorcycles to aerial rotor kites and asymmetrical planes, each one tells a story of ambition, fear, and failure. Join us as we explore 20 of the strangest Nazi vehicles ever unearthed, ghostly machines that still whisper from the shadows of a dark and desperate era. Number 20. The Land Cruiser P-1000 Ratte. In the annals of World War II military engineering, few ideas match the absurd scale of the Land Cruiser P-1000 Ratte. Commissioned by Hitler himself, the Ratte was envisioned as the largest tank ever created, stretching 115 feet long, weighing over 1,000 tons, and requiring a crew of more than 20 men. It would have sported naval guns as its main weapons, along with anti-aircraft defenses and thick armor capable of withstanding almost any enemy fire. But it never made it beyond the planning stage. Blueprints and partial components were drafted and manufactured by Krupp, but practical concerns doomed the project. The Ratte would have been too massive for most roads and bridges, and its fuel consumption would have crippled supply lines. Worse, it would have been an enormous, slow-moving target, vulnerable from the air and impossible to hide. After the war, historians uncovered long-lost design documents and rusted prototype parts in a sealed bunker near Berlin, revealing just how far Nazi engineers were willing to go in pursuit of Hitler's megalomania. The idea of building a land battleship wasn't just impractical, it bordered on madness. Today, remnants and models of the P-1000 Ratte can be seen at Germany's Military Technical Museum in Koblenz, where they remain a chilling symbol of the extremes of Nazi ambition. The Rat never rolled onto a battlefield, but it rolled straight into the darkest corners of military imagination, proof that not every monster needs to be real to be terrifying. The Fiesler Fi-103R, also known as the Reichenberg, was Nazi Germany's manned version of the infamous V-1 flying bomb. Number 19. Fiesler Fi-103 Reichenberg. Developed in 1944, it was essentially a V-1 fitted with a cockpit, allowing a pilot to guide the missile toward its target. Intended as a desperation weapon, the project reflected Germany's increasingly dire wartime situation. Unlike the V-1, which was unmanned and launched from ramps or aircraft, the Reichenberg was meant to be piloted by a volunteer who would crash it into enemy targets. Despite this, it was not officially labeled a self-harm weapon. Theoretically, the pilot was expected to bail out moments before impact, though survival was extremely unlikely due to the high speed and low altitude of the final approach. Several prototypes were built and tested, including unpowered gliding versions and later powered variants. Hannah Rich, a famous German test pilot, flew several of them and reported serious control difficulties, especially at higher speeds. The program was part of the Leonidas Squadron, a Luftwaffe unit, reportedly organized for self-sacrifice missions, though there's no verified evidence that any Reichenberg was ever used operationally in combat. After Germany's surrender, some partially completed units were discovered in storage at the aircraft factory in Dannenberg, and others were found at the Nordhausen underground facility. One preserved example now resides in the RAF Museum in London. The Kugelpanzer, or spherical tank, is one of the most enigmatic military vehicles ever associated with Nazi Germany. Only one known example exists, and it was captured by Soviet forces in Manchuria during World War II, far from the European front lines. Number 18. The Kugelpanzer. This small one-man vehicle resembles a metal ball with two large outer wheels and a small stabilizing tail wheel. It has no known armament, only a slit for vision, and was powered by a small engine likely intended for short-range use. The exact purpose of the Kugelpanzer remains unknown. Theories range from reconnaissance and communications to laying telephone cables, or conducting light patrols in secure areas. The vehicle was sent from Nazi Germany to Imperial Japan during their wartime alliance and somehow ended up in Manchuria, possibly for field testing by the Japanese Kwantung Army. No documents have been found to explain its full design, deployment, or intended use. There is also no evidence that more than one was ever built. Today, the Kugelpanzer is preserved at the Kubinka Tank Museum outside Moscow, where it draws significant attention due to its strange appearance and mysterious history. It's painted a dull silver gray and remains unrestored, with its internal mechanisms mostly intact, but not operational. Due to the complete lack of surviving blueprints or official documentation, the Kugelpanzer is one of the few World War II military machines whose origin and function remain unsolved, an abandoned relic from a forgotten project that never made it past the experimental stage. Number 17. Messerschmitt Me 323 Gigantic. The Messerschmitt Me 323 Gigantic was the largest land-based transport aircraft used in World War II, developed from the earlier glider model, the Me 323. It was fitted with 6 engines to allow for powered flight and mass cargo transport. It could carry up to 10 to 12 tons of equipment, or around 120 fully equipped soldiers, an extraordinary capability at the time, intended to support rapid deployment of men and materials, especially during campaigns like the invasion of the Soviet Union in North Africa. The Me 323 proved to be a logistical solution and a tactical vulnerability. The aircraft was slow, lightly armed, and highly susceptible to enemy fire. Entire squadrons were lost during Allied air raids, particularly in 1943 when a group of Me 323s was destroyed over the Mediterranean while transporting troops to Tunisia. Most of these massive aircraft were destroyed in combat or scrapped after the war, but a partial wreck was discovered in 2012 off the coast of Sardinia, Italy. Divers found large sections of a submerged Me 323, including portions of the fuselage and wing struts. The site was later identified using historical flight records and confirmed by serial numbers recovered from the wreckage. No complete Me 323 survives today, but some parts are preserved in museums. The aircraft remains a fascinating example of Nazi Germany's efforts to overcome logistical challenges with sheer size. Its limited success underscores the problem of designing big machines without adequate protection or support in increasingly hostile skies. Number 16. Panzer VIII Maus. The Panzerkampfwagen, the 8 Maus, was Nazi Germany's most ambitious tank design ever completed. Conceived by Ferdinand Porsche and authorized by Hitler, the Maus was intended to be a breakthrough heavy tank, virtually indestructible on the battlefield. Weighing approximately 188 metric tons, it remains the heaviest fully enclosed armored fighting vehicle ever built. Only 2 prototypes were produced before the war ended. One was a functioning vehicle with a working turret, the other had only a chassis. Due to its massive size and weight, the Maus was too heavy for most bridges and could only cross rivers via fording or custom-built support equipment. It was equipped with a powerful 128 mm main gun and a coaxial 75 mm secondary gun, both designed to take on any Allied armor. Despite its formidable armament and armor, the Maus was impractical. It was extremely slow, mechanically unreliable, and vulnerable to air attack. The project was eventually halted in late 1944 due to resource shortages and shifting priorities. After Germany's defeat, the Soviets captured the 2 prototypes at the Kummersdorf proving grounds and combined parts of both into a single display vehicle. This hybrid Maus was transported to the Kubinka Tank Museum in Russia, where it remains today, the only surviving example. The Maus was never used in combat. It represents an extreme in tank design impressive on paper, yet ultimately unfeasible in real war conditions. Next is the Schienenwolf, German for Railwolf. Was a railway demolition vehicle used by Nazi forces during World War II to destroy train tracks during strategic withdrawals. Number 15. The Schienenwolf. Its design was simple, but effective. A heavy-duty railcar fitted with a giant plow or claw dragged behind a locomotive to tear up rails as it moved. These devices were deployed particularly on the Eastern Front, where retreating German forces aimed to cripple Soviet supply routes and slow the Red Army's advance. The claw dug deep into the ties and ballast, violently uprooting and twisting steel rails behind the train. In many cases, the destruction was so thorough that rebuilding the track took weeks or even months. Unlike combat vehicles or advanced weaponry, the Schienenwolf had no armor or weaponry. Its value was purely tactical, disabling the infrastructure the enemy relied on. Several models existed, but they all followed the same core principle. The vehicle was often operated with little documentation, and most were destroyed, repurposed, or left behind after the war. One remarkably intact example was discovered decades later in a sealed rail tunnel in Poland, concealed under debris and vegetation. The claw, still connected to its frame, was rusted but recognizable. The vehicle is now preserved and displayed in a local Polish railway museum, offering a rare glimpse into the lesser-known logistical tools of the Nazi military machine. Number 14. BMW R75 with sidecar. The BMW R75 with sidecar was a versatile motorcycle used by the German Wehrmacht throughout World War II, designed for rugged terrain and battlefield utility. The R75 was more than just a two-wheeler. It had a powered sidecar wheel connected by a drive shaft, allowing it to handle mud, snow, and steep inclines more effectively than conventional motorcycles. These vehicles were commonly used for reconnaissance, dispatch, and troop mobility, and could even be fitted with machine guns for combat roles. They were produced between 1941 and 44, with over 16,000 units built. In 2007, hikers in Germany's Black Forest came across a remarkable find, an abandoned BMW R75 with its sidecar still attached, partially buried under layers of moss and forest debris. Despite decades of exposure, during World War II, Nazi Germany created some of the most terrifying and bizarre machines the world had ever seen. As the war ended, many of these experimental and oversized vehicles were abandoned, left to rust in forests, buried in bunkers, or forgotten in remote corners of Europe. Some were monstrous tanks never completed. Others were odd prototypes that defied logic. For decades they lay hidden, waiting to be rediscovered. Now, through incredible finds and painstaking restoration efforts, these chilling relics have come back into view. From amphibious motorcycles to aerial rotor kites and asymmetrical planes, each one tells a story of ambition, fear, and failure. Join us as we explore 20 of the strangest Nazi vehicles ever unearthed, ghostly machines that still whisper from the shadows of a dark and desperate era. Number 20. The Landkreuzer P1000 Ratte. In the annals of World War II military engineering, few ideas match the absurd scale of the Landkreuzer P1000 Ratte. Commissioned by Hitler himself, the Ratte was envisioned as the largest tank ever created, stretching 115 feet long, weighing over 1,000 tons, and requiring a crew of more than 20 men. It would have sported naval guns as its main weapons, along with anti-aircraft defenses and thick armor capable of withstanding almost any enemy fire. But it never made it beyond the planning stage. Blueprints and partial components were drafted and manufactured by Krupp, but practical concerns doomed the project. The Ratte would have been too massive for most roads and bridges.